Yeah, turn it on.
What is? Morning.
Hi, Chris.
Good morning, Melissa.
Morning, Bill. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good.
Morning, Bill.
Good morning. How are you?
Well, thank you.
Good. Still a little fuzzy here, huh?
For the time being, yes.
Hi, Kate.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good
Morning.
morning, everybody.
David. Hi there. Hi, Melissa.
Oh,
Morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Morning.
Sorry, I didn't. I'm not even sitting. I'm not dying. He went to polo last night.
Oh.
Good morning, Michelle.
Good morning, Mr. Jenks.
How are you today?
I'm very good. And yourself?
Oh, just wonderful.
It's a little noisy here. They're taking a gigantic oak down across the street.
What'd you say, Dave?
I say they're taking down a giant oak tree across the street. It's a little noisy here.
Oh, can't hear anything.
That's good. I can.
Well, they tried to start cutting the swale today, but I think they gave one pass of it and the tractor's gone. So I don't know what happened.
They were too soggy. I don't know. It wouldn't seem so, though.
I wouldn't think so, but it's tall.
The critters love it.
Oh, I had a deer standing right next to the pool the other day. Between that and I got ducks flying into the pool, so it's like Doctari around here.
Middle Creek #2.
Yes, exactly. Mr. Radcliffe, good morning.
Yes, good morning.
How are you?
I am delightful, thank you.
Good to see you, Mark.
Yeah.
It sounded sincere, Mark, when you said that.
Well, I am awake.
I know this is early for you. I'm sorry.
Oh, this is right when I get up, so it works out okay.
Howdy, neighbor.
Bill. Hey, Bill.
Mr. Brunner?
Top of the morning to you.
It is a beautiful morning.
We're still waiting for, I believe, John Woodward, John Buccino, George Haynes, and Phil Wirt.
Michelle, I like the welcome to the neighborhood for the new house on Reading Boulevard with the 2 trees taken down.
That's how we roll, Mark.
Yeah. Wow. Nice to see you here. We're going to take some big trees down right in front of your house.
Yeah. New ones will be planted at some point. It sounded like a clown car.
That was me. Sorry.
That's appropriate.
Yeah.
Hello?
Hi, John.
Good
Yeah,
morning.
John Woodward here. Sorry I'm a little late trying to put this place back together, and some repairman showed up early, so I had to talk to him.
Morning, John.
Good morning. Are we ready to go?
I believe so. John Buccino, George Haynes, and Phil Wirt, I don't believe are on the call yet. George did contact me this morning to let me know he's on the road, so he's going to be dialing in.
Right.
But I mean, we can start with public comment, and Mark's on the call.
John is on the call.
Yeah, good
John
morning.
Buccino.
John Buccino on the call. Michelle, good morning.
Oh, why can't I see you? Hi, John.
Hi, good morning.
All right. Well, we'll call the meeting to order the Economic Development Committee. Is there any public comment?
I'd like to make a public comment. My name is Eric Donahue. It might not necessarily pertain to this, but my question has to do with the pool opening. If there is a timetable in which council is going to vote on that, other than the month of July, if they're going to look at it early on in July and not wait till the next council meeting.
I don't know who wants to handle that, but to the best of my knowledge, the earliest the pool could open up is July 17th. Now, we have a council meeting on July 14th, and if somebody wants to bring up the vote to open it after we already voted to close it, that's a possibility. I don't know what. Go ahead.
Can that be brought up before the actual council vote? Can you actually have an emergency council vote to determine that? If you said you had it, I don't know, July 7th, the emergency vote, and voted yes, that it could open then the 17th. I'm just using those dates. Just seeing if that's a possibility, or do you actually have to wait till the regular scheduled council meeting?
No, we could have a special meeting. In fact, one of the councilmen requested one, but the majority of council didn't want a special meeting.
Okay, and the reason I ask this just is because I'm on the rec board too, and I'm getting questions, and I don't know if you guys are still getting questions about when it's opening and what's happening. They realize that statement went out from the borough. They're just trying to get more clarification as to when that actual vote will happen.
Well, to the best of my knowledge, it's going to happen on the 14th, if it happens at all. Somebody's going to have to bring it up. I don't know if it's on the agenda, but because it's too early to get the agenda. But you could call in on Zoom for the a public meeting, and I don't know when the rec board meets because I'm not on the rec board.
We
But,
meet a week before you guys this coming month.
You meet when?
A week before you.
Okay. Well, you could request to get it on the agenda again, and I don't know how it would fare, but I think if you want a little more lead time, that would be a good time to request it. And Steve Brunner's on the council, so he can do it.
Right. So we would have
John, it's Steve Brunner. I was told that there's a possibility this will be on the agenda for Monday's Fire and Police Committee meeting.
Yeah, you're right. I forgot that as well.
And that
So-
meeting is coming up, correct?
I'm sorry?
That meeting is coming up, correct?
That meeting, I believe, is Monday at noon.
Okay.
Right.
That's correct.
Is that a public meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
But that's not a council meeting, though. It's another committee meeting. So it's a recommending body, not a deciding body.
Right. No, I understand that. Okay. I mean, I just wanted to give my 2 cents that I still think the pool should open and that I think it could be done safely. I know Kate Fanning is on this call as well. And I think she's presented what we could do safely. And I know there's pools in the area, obviously they're private that are open and have been open and seem to be functioning properly under guidelines. So I just wanted to give my 2 cents with that.
Eric, this is Bill Jenks.
Yeah.
Question for you. How much time do you need if it would be voted on to reopen it? How much time frame do you need and Kate need to get staffing in place?
That I would have to probably defer to Rob to ask. Oh, Kate has an answer.
I have an answer. So last night an email was sent to Rob Lewis. Pat had asked that specific question along with some other amendments to a document that was created by the assistant manager and the district manager and myself. So we have enough staff. We went through it last night, and Rob has an email in his inbox now, which I'm asking him to review and send on to Pat. We have enough staff to open. We've done a survey. We asked people to respond. We have what we need.
So they would need like a lot of time, like a week's advance notice or anything like that.
We have all the staff we need, and we have the guard staff has already spoken to the borough crew and maybe a council person about being in there and helping to clean the bathhouse, because so that will alleviate some work from the borough crew. So everybody's ready to work, and we have what we need.
Mr. Jenks, can I comment back to you on your question? This is Pat.
Hi, Pat.
Yeah, we're in the process of reviewing a lot of things here at the borough. We have the information that Kate has presented over. We're taking a look at those policies. And it appears that there will be another bunch of policies that necessarily have to be created. Actually, the training plans, some of the training plans for lifeguards. So all those plans are in review. Some of the purpose of the discussion Monday is to lay out where we are with the pool repairs, the status of the pool repairs. So I believe it's a little bit premature to say that, we're ready with everything or we could just start. And really the staffing, there's a lot of stuff on the borough end of the staffing with clearances and paperwork and so forth, which still needs to be completed. So this is still very much a in progress operation.
Okay.
Right, but I've provided all the documentation for lifeguard training, lifeguard rescues, policies at the pool, how the staff will, everything that will happen like from a day at the pool when you walk in to when you leave.
And that's what I'm saying. And Kate, that's what I'm saying. It's still under review. That document, while it has a lot of stuff, there's a lot of stuff that needs to be added to it, which we are working on.
Right, and I've given, the stuff that you told me to add was completed and Mr. Lewis has it, was sent last night.
And there's additional information as we go through the review of the document that has to be added to, and that will be coming back as soon as we can.
Oh, back to me or?
Yes, ma'am. Back to you for review.
Okay.
Well, this is John here, and My position is that we shouldn't reopen the pool. I don't know why we think we're smarter than our friends in West Reading and Shillington, but because I don't think we are. But in any event, I only have one vote, so I just don't want to duck your questions. So that's the way I feel. Anyway, let's get to the economic development part of the meeting.
I'm sorry, this is Ann Anderson. I would like a second to comment too, please.
Go ahead, make it brief,
Thank you.
please. We have other people that are busy that need to get onto the meeting.
Okay, well, this is a public meeting and I was informed that we have the ability to speak, so I would like that. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to talk, and I think that, everybody has seen the emails that I've sent. This is about more than I think people are willing to appreciate. Kate has done fantastic work. There are other pools besides the ones that you're mentioning are closed that have opened, like Eric said, and are very successful. I am also struggling with the fact that it's very hard to get a commitment. We're asking for another meeting as constituents that have voted you guys in. I think I'm struggling with the fact that it feels as though we're being so dismissed with our requests. And I would like to very nicely ask that another vote is made before July 14th. I think that we are not thinking about the fact that our children have been locked down since March, and there's so many other factors regarding mental health and the ability for our kids to, what is being told to us, pretty much safely be at a pool. I think that I'm begging for you guys to please consider that, because I'm not seeing that any of that's being considered right now. And I am starting to question whether or not we're even being listened to, and I don't like that feeling. I want to work together as Wyomissing residents and the voted upon Borough Council, and I think that we have the right to sit here for a minute and talk about something that clearly over 500 people are in favor of. So please consider that, and please consider voting before July 14th. I don't understand why we can't vote now so that we know that Kate can start to get things in place.
Well, I think this is more appropriate conversation for the fire and police, and Steve reminded me it's on the agenda. There typically are at least 5 council people out of 7 there, and I would really like to move on. And it's not like winners and losers. We're all losers. So it's, whatever we do could be wrong. But I presume we'll take it up again. We can talk about it on Monday and see what happens. If you would like to ring on Monday, I think that would be a more appropriate time to talk about it.
And thank you very much. I will do that. I just want to say that this is like the 3rd meeting that we've been told to call into and talk about it with. So I hope on Monday that there will be people who are willing to listen to more public comment. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, let's move on. Who do we have here that wants to talk about existing businesses, development, and commercial real estate?
John, I'll kind of start the conversation. This one.
That'd be great.
So, John, you're aware I sent you an article last week about how the pandemic is impacting restaurant businesses. That kind of started a thought in my head. We're about 3.5 months into this. We have great relationships with our partners in West Reading, Phil Wirt and Mark Radcliffe. George Haynes is on this call to talk from a developer perspective, what the impact has done to the development side of things. And I also asked John Buccino, who is a commercial real estate broker, to hop on to talk about the trends that he's seeing since the pandemic started. So with that said, out of the 4 of you, I'm not sure which one of you wants to go first, but you're welcome to take the lead and just, talk for 5 to 10 minutes. I'd love this to be a very open dialogue. Please don't sugarcoat things. This is going to help the borough and myself with formulating ideas and, potentially policies for moving forward in the next 6 to 12 months.
Since George is on the road, and he's on the call, maybe he should go first.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. And sorry that I am on the move a little bit this morning. Yeah, I guess I don't have prepared comments, but the last few months have certainly been interesting. I guess I'll give you a big picture sense of what we have been doing, what we've seen, the kind of our personal evolution over the past few months, and start big and then work our way small and kind of into the Wyomissing specific kind of details. So I'd say, kind of starting in mid-March into the third week of March, you saw what was happening, and our first concern was on rent collection, right? How was April 1st going to look? And we were actually shocked that by about the 10th of April, our collections across the country, across all property types, our numbers had been at about 96% collections. We had some more issues with some projects that we have down in North Carolina, where that portfolio is about 4 million square feet, and it consists mostly of flex and kind of small mom and pop industrial buildings. So the smaller the business, the more that they were certainly hurt by the pandemic and by the shutdowns. But across the board, industrial, office, little bit of retail, and a lot of multifamily apartment units, we were at 96%. And that has held pretty consistent across, April, May, and now June. And now going into July, we have one hotel project in our entire portfolio, and it's one that we built on our campus in Delaware County, Newtown Square. That was obviously a complete disaster. But it was funny to see that our lender on the hotel, Guggenheim, actually reached out to us and said, listen, take the next 4 months of debt service and just tack it onto the end of our loan term. So we're just, we're proactively reaching out to everybody saying, take the next 4 months and tack it onto the end, and, let us know how it goes in September. So that was interesting. I think it was a smart move by them. And I think that they were trying to, prevent an awful lot of hotel owners sending keys back and going through a foreclosure process, which they had no interest in. So certainly hotels got hit the worst. Retail, we do not have much retail, thankfully. The retail that we do have was certainly challenging. Sly Fox, close to home here for everybody, reached out to us immediately. I talked to John Giannopoulos, and we worked something out with John to take about 3 months of rent and kind of defer it, amortize it over the life of the lease, which helped him out a lot. Then after another couple of weeks, he said, listen, the key to our success is going to be having open space. So we actually worked with John to create the outdoor seating and dining and drinking area that you may have seen if you've gone over there. I think, we laid down the base stone area, and then he came in with lights and benches and whatnot to make it a pretty attractive area, actually. And the thought was that this would be a short-term use, but we'll see how it goes. It actually is a really nice, I feel like it's a nice addition to the campus. So we'll see how that goes. Separately, we have VF at our campus, and they were shut down until about 2 weeks ago. They took a different position across their entire portfolio of 90 stores across the country and said, look, we're not paying anybody until we occupy the space again. And if we're in default, we're in default. We don't care. So, we're actually still in the middle of a workout with VF. It's kind of bigger corporation, and, it's not quite as let's say, intimate and, like you're dealing with local people, right, where you can work something out. They have to take big company-wide positions. But that's what we have seen on the development side. Michelle, you asked me to speak to that. all of our projects got shut down on the development side. The two big development projects we have are Ducom, and then we're also building a 400,000 square foot office build-to-suit for AmeriHealth in Delaware County. Both jobs got shut down on, I think, the 20th of March. And we appealed to Tom Wolf and got a lot of support locally. Thank you for everybody who jumped in there. But we got a lot of support locally. We made the appeal and we got exemptions on both projects. So on both projects, we lost about 7 days in our schedule, which was a heck of a lot better than, a month and a half or so. So we were very careful and protocol on testing and taking temperatures. And fortunately for Ducom, we were still just erecting steel. So everybody's outside, nobody's enclosed. It was actually, it couldn't have been better timing. And in that month or month and a half that we gained by way of the exemption, in that time we made great progress. I mean, if you haven't been up there recently, it's let's say half of the building was erected in steel in that month and a half, kind of the southern half of the building. They built it in stages. So that was great. As far as other projects, other development, like across the asset classes, industrial is going to be the big winner from all of this. So distribution, people getting even more comfortable ordering products at home, bringing manufacturing and those products from abroad, bringing them domestically and kind of having those products here, so it's not stuck overseas or another country controls our supply chain in some way, which is what we had heard about, some medicine and medical devices and PP&E, et cetera. So what we're seeing is unbelievable demand for industrial right now. So we have about 3.5 million square feet of warehouses that we're building today, kind of in the middle of Pennsylvania and working our way down I-81. And we also have some projects in North Carolina and South Carolina. And that is, it's absolutely incredible what's happening in industrial. And then on the multifamily side, things might be a little soft for a month or two, but we're seeing an interest, or kind of we're seeing statistics about it, even more decline in home ownership, whether it's by choice or by necessity, and continued strength in the multifamily market. So we have one project that we're trying to move forward on in Conshohocken. We bought, even in the middle of the pandemic, we bought about 15 acres in Fort Washington, on which we plan to build 300 units, and we're looking for more sites. And we're certainly looking to put a nice multifamily project together up in Berks County, Wyomissing. We would love to put something in motion up there, but we're trying to find the right site. We're trying to find math that works to make a project viable up there. On the office side, office is a huge mystery. We're fortunate, and we consider ourselves blessed for what we have up in Wyomissing and the tenants we have and kind of the long-term leases that we have, because, multi-tenant office with short-term leases, it could get pretty choppy. And we're not really sure, what the new world order will be. We've heard everything from de-densification and people needing to spread out, so you need more space, to, everybody's working at home. We've never been so successful. We love it. Our people are happy, and we're never coming back, right? So, in our markets, in like, let's say suburban Philadelphia, this was called 2 weeks ago. We had a request from a tenant for 100,000 square feet. We had which is, just smaller than the UGI building. We had 2 new inquiries for about 25 to 50,000 square feet. And in the same week, we had a 25,000 square foot tenant that had just signed a new lease tell us, we're never coming back, and we're putting the space on the sublease market. So office is all over the board. And I think I've spent 3 months on conference calls and Zoom calls debating, what the future is of office. But admittedly, my big takeaway is nobody knows. Nobody has any clue what's going to happen with office. Every person is different. Every individual is different as far as like, does this work for you or does it not? I think every industry is different. And I think the culture of different companies within industries are different, right? So it's going to take some time. I don't think there's like one solution for everybody. So we'll see how that goes. As far as hotels, I think it'll certainly bounce back eventually, but it could take several months. And admittedly, if people find Zoom calls effective, you might not see quite as much travel, so it might not be a 100% recovery, but we certainly see a recovery. I think it's really retail, everyone, that I've said in a few conversations that I don't think that COVID has changed anything. Like, I don't think that COVID has changed the trajectory as much as it has served as a catalyst, right? So industrial was strong. It's getting much stronger. Multifamily was strong. It's going to continue to stay strong. In office was a little shaky, and I think it's going to continue on that path. Retail was on a bad path to begin with, and I think this is only going to accelerate it. So, some retail will continue to perform, grocery anchored centers, perhaps, certain pads, et cetera. But, your traditional strip centers with no anchors, certainly the malls, you see Preet, which is kind of one of the largest mall owners in the country. They're on the verge of bankruptcy. And it's grim. It's grim for retail. So that's kind of our assessment. I mean, it's you really need to look at locations specific. You need to look at product type specific. Development will go on. Continued investment, certainly in your market will go on, but not necessarily across all asset classes. And I was talking to Michelle and kind of by extension Chris Hartman this week about some changes in zoning perhaps, and I was trying to encourage, if you want new investment, it's all about trying to break down barriers and make things as kind of give people as much flexibility as you can within reason, because you want to encourage it. You want to encourage new investment, new growth, new development, irrespective of the asset class, and just do what you can to put the wind at a developer's back. That may sound self-serving, but that's my opinion.
Well, George, hey, thank you very much. This is John Woodward speaking. I'm glad you enjoyed my email the other day. And is there any?
I sure did.
Is there any movement on the property or the building at 8th and Hill?
There is not, John. No. We continue to try to find a kind of like a neighborhood grocer. We actually had about a month ago, if you have heard of Sprouts, Sprouts Market. Sprouts was looking at it. The building itself is 15,000 square feet. Sprouts prototype is 20,000 square feet. So we were trying to get creative and find ways to expand it for them. But it appears as though it's not going to work. We had explored creating a food hall there, John, like almost like a Reading terminal concept. But that's kind of fallen by the wayside because you really need a good operator in there. It's difficult. It's difficult. We've had some uses approach us that really aren't that attractive. I mean, they would pay rent, but it's a small piece of the project, right? Just value wise. So we kind of look at it and say we don't need to make every last penny with it, but we kind of want to do it right. So we're turning away some uses, but for the hopes of finding a fit that, while on its own might not maximize value for the entire project, there's benefit, and it kind of it's additive to what we've already created there.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. It was quite thorough. But, hey, John, do you have anything else to add, George, or are there any questions for George?
I have a question for George. George, this is Chris. I'm wondering if you've had any discussions about changes in design or layout of projects because of the pandemic and public health concerns. For example, with regard to multifamily housing, to try to anticipate continuing public health concerns with design and layout.
Right. Yeah. So, Chris, phenomenal question. On the office side, there has been a tremendous amount of discussion that we've had with engineers, architects, joint venture partners. There's been a lot of focus on HVAC, right? And upgrades in HVAC, upgrades in fresh air intake. There's I think they call it a MERV rating, right? And you're going from everybody's suggesting you go from a 7 to a 14. I have no idea what that even means. But when I quote it, people are like, this is real. There's something there. So a lot of focus on HVAC. People think that office space will be redesigned just with regard to spacing, right? Like back in the 80s, everybody had private offices, and then things evolved, and the new extreme was you go to GlaxoSmithKline in South Philadelphia at the Navy Yard, and they effectively work on cafeteria style benches, right? I mean, just long benches, and you show up and plug in, and everybody's in there and densely packed. And now there's a kind of reverting back to more private offices, maybe some open space here and there, but just not quite as much, jamming the sardines in the space, right? So just spreading out. Office, absolutely. Industrial, kind of, no, not at all, obviously. Retail, we haven't heard that yet. Multifamily, Chris, right? Here's the thing, right? Multifamily design, your average apartment size used to be, call it 1,200 square feet for a one, or let's say a big one bedroom would be 1,200, maybe 1,100 square feet. And this was in the 80s, right? And over time, it's just gotten smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller because it's cheaper and it's more profitable. And in the cities, you see a lot of apartments as small as 350 square feet, average apartment size, including ones and twos and studio, down to like 700 square feet, okay? And it's gotten smaller and smaller. Now the people are saying, well, wait a minute, I need a home office. I need more space. If something like this happens again, or even if it doesn't, but my company decides to do more of a work at home, I'm going to get claustrophobic in 650 square feet, right? So there has been discussion about, a one bedroom with a den, 2 bedrooms with the alcove, right? So there is thought to redesigning projects on the apartment side to create a little bit more room. Now, more room means less profit if rents are held flat. So intuitively, as these units get bigger, developers are going to be demanding a much higher rent. Even if it's about the same on a per square foot level, it's going to be much more on a whole dollar basis, if that makes any sense.
Well, that's interesting. Some of this will eventually translate to building code amendments.
Yes.
I'm trying to think about whether there's anything that we would want to consider with regard to zoning, with regard to layout. But nothing you've said to me seems to be on that topic as far as I can tell.
I think it's just, Chris, and Michelle and I did talk a little bit earlier this week. I think I think it's probably, with regard to zoning, it's probably parking ratio that you'll want to think through, right? And if there is a mixed use component, which can cause more frustration from a development and financing standpoint, but if there is a mixed use concept, consider shared parking, right? Consider, a lot of apartment projects, the standard used to be two parking spaces per unit, right?
Mhm.
And communities would want to see that just so that the streets don't get overloaded. But when you have such a high parking ratio requirement, again, you have to either build it on surface or in structure, and it adds cost to a project, right? So I had said to Michelle, listen, to the extent you feel comfortable dialing the parking ratios down a little bit or introducing a shared parking component, that lowers the hurdle a little bit and allows projects to be built.
Yeah, with mixed use, we can justify the shared parking. But
Yes.
if you drop the mixed use aspect out of the project, then the shared parking goes with it. So I mean, we can certainly build flexibility in and say, if you're mixed use, you can have
Right.
shared parking. If you're not mixed use, then of course you have to meet the requirements for the use that you're choosing.
That's right. Yep. That's right.
Thanks, George.
Sure thing, Chris.
Hey, George, it's Fred Levering. You didn't mention the medical school. Everything moving as expected?
Right. So our code name for the medical school is DUCOM, Fred, Drexel University College of Medicine. And yeah, like I said, we lost about 7 days.
All right. I didn't get that as the project. Okay.
Yep. So no, that's right on track and doing really well. Looks like, personally, I think it looks beautiful and very prominent sitting up there on the hill.
Yep, for sure. Now, along those lines, I've been part of a task force through the chamber in regards to the passenger train to Philly thing. And we had a meeting last April where things were looking very positive as far as the viability and feasibility of the thing. The final report of our consultant is supposed to be made available in the middle of July. So I think we're getting close to having some definitive story as to what can or can't be done, and then we move on to the next part of it. But it's looking positive. There is a concern though that I have, and anybody on this call that can influence anybody, I welcome it. There is some talk about terminating the service at 7th and Franklin and not coming over to the borough, which I have argued strongly against for a bunch of different reasons. There are some restrictions with Norfolk Southern, at least presently, about speed on that section of the line, and I'm trying to get to the bottom of why that is. I don't really know at this point whether it's correctable or not. If the extra 10 minutes or something sitting on the train is that important to you, then go to 7th and Franklin. But I think that it is critical that this thing comes over to the borough, and I will argue about that until the cows come home. But that remains a hurdle. And John Woodward and I had some discussion about this a couple of weeks ago and so on, and he's aware. But I would really appreciate any help we can get. And I think that the obvious help is Tower Health and Drexel to be able to make sure in no uncertain terms that everyone understands how important it is to the project, and to, more importantly, to the future of that project.
Fred, Dave Boucher here. Just as a rail enthusiast, I would like to offer my comment about the speed you talk about from 7th and Franklin over to Wyomissing. I believe a big problem is track maintenance. The track going up across Penn Street and out toward the old Reading Yards is not great shape.
Well, that's correctable, and would have to be factored into the cost of the project. I mean, I can deal with that a lot better than some of these other, I don't know why concepts. So, but it's good to know that, Dave. Thank you.
Well, so the train goes slowly for what, 2.5 miles?
Right. That's part of my point. If 10 minutes is that important to you, then go down to 7th and Franklin and get on it. One of my concerns that I've expressed, and this is utterly speculation on my part from years of experience with this stuff, is that there are those in our overall community here that would like to force people to go to downtown Reading and not be able to access it from the borough, which eliminates the need to go to downtown Reading. And, all the things that we've done over the years with the Santander Center and other things downtown, the spin-off for the nightclubs and sports bars and all the rest, retail and whatnot, has never really happened. And here we go again, that they're going to, at the most, get a parking lot out of it. I think it's got to grow on its own accord. I've always believed in, the idea of grow with your success. And you start out with what we were doing in the borough and add in working cooperatively with West Reading and Spring Township and let it grow over the Penn Street Bridge instead of trying to force it there. But there are those that will do that.
Yeah, well, let's move on. Anything else for George? George, thank you. And if we could go to John next, that would be great. If you can talk about the big picture stuff. If George and John want to get off the call, then we'll talk specifics with Mark and Phil. But John, if you want to make some comments, please.
Sure, I can jump in a little bit. I'm kind of whatever I can fill in from what George didn't talk about, which isn't going to be much. He covered the gamut pretty well, especially from the broad stroke, big picture standpoint. I agree wholeheartedly with his assessment as well. We're seeing the same sort of dynamic here locally. Tremendous amount coming into the year here on pretty much all segments, probably with the exclusion of retail, even though there was still a little bit of activity in that market. The industrial was incredibly strong. Office was pretty stable. Personally, I don't do a lot in the multifamily world, so I don't really want to speak on that. But as far as development and other activity that was happening in our market here, it was all extremely robust. So when this hit here in March, some of that momentum, just carried through, and there was still a fair amount of activity that continued through the periods of March and April, and even into May. But majority of that was residual projects that had been on the books. I would have to say, I did a quick little assessment a little while ago. Probably about 40% of the activity that I had on the books sort of fell off or was pressed pause. Some of it has been terminated, but some of it's also in that sort of holding pattern. So, we're hoping some of that previously stuff was going to come back to life. However, same time, here in the last probably 2 or 3 weeks, there's been a real uptick in the amount of activity that it almost feels like the last 2 weeks like change. It's an incredible amount of inquiry calls, so it's very encouraging at the moment. It's just hard to understand whether we're going to have any permanency that's going to just sort of people sort of with demands here of being on the sidelines, wanting to get back in, engage the process in the market. Because at the end of the day, what we see a lot happening is projects will be advanced up to a point, but they're not getting the final sign-offs because a little bit of still linked. I think it's a go scenario day by day, where these companies are just trying to fly, whether it's just chips in the middle or not. And some very with the decisions are being made, and projects are moving forward. Incredible strength in that I went from having probably smaller end of the industrial, probably 40, 50,000 of multiple units of the 8,000 square foot flex spaces. I think I've got 5,000 left. I mean, it just, everything got mopped up on that arena. Everything I have that was in a bigger box, 70, 80,000 square feet up to 150 to 200, pretty much been mopped up, or we're in progressed conversations with getting those pinned down, which is really starting to create a dynamic now we have seen in a long time, which is developers coming into our market looking at raw dirt and land, trying to figure out can they get a spec build up, and we're having advanced conversations now for entities coming in and talking about doing just that, and actually putting up the buildings anywhere between these 20,000 to 150,000 square foot speculative industrial buildings, which, and so that energy in that sector, I think is positive and going to continue to go forward. I think bodes well for our area and our market. We really push from perspective whenever we're having dialogue or conversations. We're really pressing our advantages here in this region, which is the industrial manufacturing, the workforce issues, comparative advantage that we have on cost of living and rates, and I think we're benefiting from that. Not a lot of opportunities for segment in the Lehigh Valley. It's been built out pretty well. So we're starting to really benefit. Again, these are trends that had been in place. And as George had pointed out, I think this event has just been more of a catalyst, just accelerating that momentum. So from my perspective, one of the things that I always get a little bit concerned about is structure and the region being able to maintain and handle the increased growth and job creation, which throws off all kinds of ancillary activity, which is new housing stock and supportive retail type of things and healthcare, et cetera. They all go hand in hand in terms of as your employee base grows, these are things that need to be accounted for, and this is where zone and the push for infrastructure from PennDOT and everything else becomes so critical. I know we're all sort of waiting to see how this comes out. I know that PennDOT has made announcements that there's been commitments for our area for road projects, which is great. I mean, just at least we know that it takes some uncertainty off, but it also seems like it's been diminished to a large degree from where it was anyways. Not sure there's not anything that can be done about that, obviously, except other than just keep rattling the cage here, just making noise from our perspective, just how important the region is for the sort of the growth for the greater Southeast PA. But from the other segments that we're seeing, the one that where a lot of errors come out of has been the healthcare. Obviously, towers are 800-pound gorilla market. They had a lot of projects on the books that they pressed pause on. There was initially a 60-day moratorium that came into effect. Basically, it was pretty much about the middle of April that they just pressed pause on all of their development. Anything that wasn't executed or had a lease or any kind of commitment in place, they just pressed pause on. And now it seems to be taking on a new dynamic where they're reevaluating exactly how they're going to be moving forward with their practices internally. And from what we're hearing, it seems like there's going to be a continued diminishment as far as them going out to market to create new practices or facilities. So is this a temporary phenomenon? Is this something where they just want to sort of step back, take a breath, and try to see if what that world is going to look like in a year from now, and maybe momentum pick up again? It's hard to tell. If you just a broad view, healthcare is not going away. It's obviously critical, and it's going to continue to expand. I guess it just comes down to at what level of expansion, or are they going to try to do more with less? So it is a little bit of a wild card as far as that component of our market. Oftentimes what we're seeing the health do is repurposing underutilized buildings or potentially functionally obsolete buildings that we have in our market. It's all great source to go back to if it's at least well positioned, but it might be old, and it's a tough challenge for a traditional like office or retail to use a facility. Healthcare typically had the resources to be able to get in there and apply the appropriate amount of investment to really bring it back online. One aspect that curious to see how that's going to evolve, because it was a good benefit for stocks to get revitalized in certain segments of the market around the country. At front, one of the things that we're keeping an eye on is the restaurant industry. I think we're seeing a lot of casual dining or just standalone restaurant facilities. They're obviously dark at the moment, or they're just operating at minimum capacity here. Whether or not they're going to make it, whether or not these things are going to come out and be on the market for repositioning, or what's going to happen in our world in general. Is it going to have a resurgence at some point, so there can be some health brought back into that segment of the industry? It's very difficult to understand at the moment. But we are keeping an eye on a lot of those facilities. The office component is George couldn't have described it better. It's all over the place. It's very difficult to understand. I've been personally very busy with my portfolio of office. I've completed probably a little over 40,000 square feet of office steel here, and just in the last 2 to 3 months. And I'm working on a 13,000 square foot transaction. I've got a 5,500, another 7,000. So the activity is there, and a lot has to do this inflection point that we're dealing with, which trend here for the last 5-8 years has been towards more and more density. Companies trying to just cram as many bodies as possible into spaces and in clustered workstations, and that whole dynamic is changing. It's just kind of an unwinding. Even though you're getting that, you have a portion of the workforce going to be working for the community. It's that spacing people out again. So it is creating a different approach to the office market, which in a lot of ways is creating more space requirements from some of the entities are operating within the buildings, but at the same time, they're coming back hard on the landlords for concessions. So it's, I think from the landlord's perspective, it's good and bad. You're getting your buildings leased up, but at what price? And we're sort of battling through that. But so far, we haven't had to backtrack from landlords from the rents too much. It's mainly kind of coming through in the form of concessions on rent abatements, etc. But we're encouraged for the most part on quality buildings out there staying occupied. We're not tremendous fallout by any means at this point. And then the retail is a complete mess. So we just have no confidence really that the retail is going to continue in any sort of recognizable way. It's a changing world, and we're seeing it at all levels. Where the mall is, what we're hearing has traded hands, and that's a new. They're hard to tell exactly, and we're only getting snippets of what's happening there, and it looks like at the moment it's from a group that's just mainly fired just to sort of, I don't want to say milk, just sort of ride with what existing performances are in place with the mall, not putting a whole lot of investment in it, just waiting to see how this thing. Where the market goes, and then at that point try to figure out how to rotate another type of development. We're kind of designing that as well. There's a couple of development projects though, right in our immediate area that are going to be happening. At least from what I'm hearing from some of the developers, some retail. I hear a pharmacy is still very interested in a location up in State Hill Road, and. Yep. And well, I have a couple other things. Again, construction related. There's an entity out of the greater New York area. It's actually out of Rochester. That they're a construction equipment reseller and leasing entity, and they're looking to find a location in our market to open up a nice, 16,000 square foot facility on 5 acres. Investment coming into the market, so we always are very welcoming of that. But for the most part, right now, the activity is strong. We're just crossing our fingers that it's got staying power. It's very difficult to understand though. This evolve, the actual overall market is going to where it's gonna be. Where have we hit a bottom at baseline and it's only up from here, or are there going to be fits and starts to this over the next several years? So all we can do at the moment is just work what we've got and stay hopeful. But so far, good for our local market here.
Hey, thank you, John. George, are you still there?
George, excuse me, John. George had to hop off the call.
Okay. John or Michelle, do you want to make a comment about the Berkshire Mall?
John did, but his audio was cutting out a little bit, so I don't know how much you all picked up on that.
I didn't get much of it.
Oh, see if I can readjust here. Is the audio a little bit better now?
Yeah, it was like every other word, it was kind of cutting out.
Oh, you should have stepped in, Michelle. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So regarding the Berkshire Mall, it has changed hands, and we're not communicating directly with the new ownership entity, but with some of the people that are dealing with them at the mall. And we're getting some information as far as who they are and how they approach the investments. It's an overseas company. They do have an office in New York City, but they're out of Israel. That have they have a program of going in and buying distressed assets and properties in the retail segment, especially malls around the country. They typically don't put a lot of investment into the properties at any initial stages, and it's mainly just sort of writing out existing performance metrics that are in place, and then they're kind of a wait and see where the market's going to go, and then what the what would be a good mixed use sort of master plan development for the site. They're very patient, I guess is one way to put it. They're not very proactive on trying to kind of force anything. They're very much a kind of wait and see mentality from what I'm being told. So it's kind of good and bad. Hopefully there's, eventually at some point there's going to be a turnabout on that property. However, I wouldn't expect to see anything in the near or immediate future on anything big there.
John, a question from Chris
Yes.
on that, the comments you just made about the mall. The entity that bought it, are they likely to be the redeveloper, or would they flip it at the point where they see the market being appropriate for redevelopment?
Well, it's a great question, because I think that's, where, a lot of folks are looking at this and wanting to step up and either put a proposal on the table and say, can we, just buy it from you and we'll do the heavy lifting, or is there a JV opportunity, do a joint venture and work together on it. My understanding is the way they operate is that they won't really do much unless they hit a pretty high bar in terms of return metric. So that it puts some challenges on the sort of flipping model, because if they're going to be asking for, quite a large return, it's going to take a lot of oxygen out of the room in terms of how much new development can come in and actually, apply the resources and expect to make any return on a project of that size. We're talking about it'd be a substantial investment. So it's one where, it really comes down to, at the end of the day, I believe it's going to be a group that's going to create a relationship with the existing ownership, come up with a good plan, create a win-win, and then I think then at that point it would, sort of lay the groundwork for a successful project. But they're tricky to work with, from my understanding. They're sort of tough.
So what I'm hearing you say, John, is in the short term, you think that the change in ownership is more likely to result in developers looking to other sites because the current owners are, they have such high demands, but that in the long run, there will be redevelopment at that site.
Well, I do believe
fair to
that
say?
because, yeah, because I think there's only so much time you can go just sort of kind of squeezing out whatever nickels and dimes you can out of a property like that before, the market forces themselves present opportunities that you just can't say no to. And I think that's, in this case, will be a big driver. A user coming in or a model that can be demonstrated as being very successful in that location, I think will drive a lot of the conversation and how this evolves. But if it's just going to be kind of one of those master plan, hoping to backfill it with some good paying retail tenants or mixed use, etc., kind of on a, not a hope and a prayer, but along the lines of just hoping that you're going to get those kind of tenants. I don't think you're going to see much activity on that mall. It's going to have an impetus of some sort that's going to drive it for anything to happen in the near term, in my opinion.
John,
Okay.
this
Go
is
ahead.
Bill Jenks. You're saying something would have to happen, for the mall to do something, or the developer. Where does Fairgrounds Mall and their future development feed into the Berkshire Mall?
That's a good question. It's a little different animal. You actually have 4, maybe 5 anchored tenants that are performing there. I think obviously in the world that we're in right now, nothing's really performing, but you have some quality entities there that are, God willing, everybody makes it through and things take on a little bit of a semblance of activity that goes back to somewhat normal. The entities that are there as the kind of, we call them like little nodes, because if you look at that property, you've got the movie theater, you've got Burlington, you've got the shoe store, you got the fitness, and all of those things by themselves right now I'm sure are suffering. But if they are able to get back online, those will be your main tenants for that property. And the mall is currently in demolition mode. The owners are of everything else on that property, so they're actually going to be creating these little standalone boxes that are then going to redevelop the site from a combination of it was a mixed use, from my understanding. And they're looking at healthcare, they're looking at multifamily. So they're looking at multiple ways to do that. And that area over there is it's interesting. I think there's demand for a certain aspect of new residential development. You just don't have any new stock coming online over there. So I think they could be partially successful with that there. Now they got an incredibly low cost basis on that property. So that dynamic is going to allow them a lot of room and headroom to be able to go out, put up some facilities and keep the market rates for their rents, whatever that might be, at a very, very manageable level to keep it attractive. And that's a big driver of I think, a big differential between that property and the mall property. My understanding, and this is just, you can't take this to the bank because it's just kind of hearsay, but from what we're hearing out there, that the underlying note and outstanding mortgage that was on the mall, the Berkshire Mall, was in the $60 million range, and that the new entity bought the note at a discount in the $30 million range. So it's, if that is true, then though that's a huge discount from the underlying debt that was on that property, it's still a significant, sum of money that I think, they're not going to have the wiggle room to be able to just sort of take a flyer and do a project on spec. I think they're going to need to have something real in hand to be able to preserve their return metrics.
Well, it's no secret, that I would love to see the mall property turn into something like the Belmont down in Lancaster, or like what they're doing across from King of Prussia Mall. And that's a beautiful site to do that. I guess what I was driving at is you know, I don't want to see the Berkshire Mall losing market share because they're just sitting back while Fairgrounds moves ahead is, I guess, my main concern.
Yeah, I don't think it's a zero-sum game on that. I think that if Fairgrounds sort of proves out like a proof of concept on what they're doing there, I don't think it would diminish the the ability for the Berkshire Mall to replicate something along those lines. In my opinion, it's a different market. It's a different trade area. I think you'll have, a sort of a different, type and maybe a different mix of types of activity that would happen on there, and maybe you can create some little higher value stuff. But I don't think it would be a zero sum. I think our market in general could support two versions of that. And I bet they'd be slightly different versions, but somewhere along the same lines.
Okay, thank you, John.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks, John. I appreciate it. Any other questions for John? Okay, thanks. We're going to move on.
Very good. Thank you, guys.
Thanks. Phil or Mark, you want to start for the West Reading perspective?
Yeah, I'll jump in. So quickly, we've got approximately 8 businesses right now that are closing during the this pandemic. Flourish Cafe, Sharp Dressed Man, Bort's Jewelers, Gourmand, Wine Down, Frock are some of them. And 3 of those were planned to close prior to it. I think a couple, as George had expressed earlier, were kind of on the tipping point anyway. Anybody that's got a strong business is there and hanging in there. So retail in general, I think, is going to continue on in West Reading. It's everybody seems to be doing well. Of some of those that have gone out, there are already new stores coming in. We've got a freshwater fish store, meaning a tank, not like a Go Fish, that's going in. Ziff's Candy moved into a new location. We have a Rebel Hide Meaderies opening up, a new bridal store that's opening up. So there's still activity and interest in opening on Penn Avenue. So as when we get out of this, things aren't going to look, at least for now, as bleak as everybody's saying. Our 5-year plan is close to being done. They are, the elements that they're working on are placemaking and redevelopment, design standards, and then ultimately implementation strategy. All of that, it's, we got some really interesting pieces out of that, and I'll let Phil talk to that a little bit more. But does anybody have any questions about West Reading since John's on the phone? The big question I get is the Spruce closing. The answer is no.
No, we're going to open Monday.
Yes. Oh, that's exciting, John. Thank God I don't have to answer those questions anymore.
Hey, Mark, it's Bill Jenks. Question for you. Are you at liberty to share? I also serve on the board at the YR Club, and had a rather lengthy discussion with George and Eleni Zeppos last week.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that they listen in on some of the meetings with McDonald's Corporation. Are you able to share any information from those meetings?
Sure. What do you want to know? I think Stephanie communicates. I don't know that they're listening into anything, but Stephanie.
Oh, okay. I just heard that their market's down 40%. Is what George had alluded to.
Yeah, McDonald's, when the crisis first hit, in general, I think the company was down 40%. Some of Stephanie's stores were down up to 60%. But I think due to the lack of anywhere else to go, slowly crept their way back up, and now they're running at normal, normal income levels.
Yeah.
It's impressive because it's just with drive-through.
The other aspects that George had mentioned to me, that as far as the restaurant trade goes, the position that he thinks is that we're not going to just reopen. We have to rebrand, and when everything comes to light, this is going to be like opening a brand new restaurant again.
I don't know that that's true. I mean, John Woodward might be able to speak to that a little bit more. I think those businesses that have a strong niche, like I think Willoughby's, they are what they are, and they don't have a lot of competition in that market. I think they'll be able to open up just fine. I know that Mozzie's, a Greek style restaurant that they are moving forward with. And, as far as the hitching post goes and some of their other places, I'm not quite sure, but I think one of the things that's lacking is people are staying at home more, is that there's a strong desire to get out and do things. And I think even the retail market needs to look at themselves more as entertainment than as a necessity. You don't have to go out and shop anymore, and you haven't for a while, but it's more important than ever to think of yourself as an entertainment, and make sure that you've got something engaging, and that your downtown is activated, as they're calling it now, that we've got events and we've got things going on to give people a reason to get out of their house and come.
Well, restaurants and bars provide a social function for society. I mean, you can cook at home all you want, but you're not going to see other people. So I think that'll help. But, I'm good friends with Mike Polano from the Pike and Shirley's, and we had a long conversation yesterday. He said, John, I'm more nervous about opening up now than when I bought the Pike and put my life savings into it. And I said, yeah, it's weird. It's weird. So.
What's the concern, that people aren't going to come back, John?
No, I just think the concern is, I think my main concern is, are we going to get a spike and have to close again? I threw away I lost about $20,000 worth of product. I had to throw $3,000 worth of food away, gave $12,000 to Opportunity House, and pour in $3,500 worth of beer down the drain. Well, when I open up, I'm not going to have 20 beers on tap. I'll probably have 5 and see what happens. And we limited the menu a little bit. And, because if I have to go through this again, that would kill me. I mean, I'm involved in a young man's sport, and I'm not getting any younger.
Yeah, good point.
So.
And I think that's true. And, McDonald's has done the same thing, as they've tightened up their menu to get it down to their profitable items so that they can weather the storm. And I think you'll see that with all the restaurants.
Okay. Any questions for Mark? We move on to Phil. Are you still there, Phil?
I am.
Good.
With headphones.
Yeah. Sorry, I had a comment. Yeah. Go ahead, John. What would you like to know?
Well, why don't you start with the West Reading Shopping Center, since you're kind of the expert on that.
Well, thanks for inviting me, first of all.
Thanks for coming. You too, Mark.
Sure. So, Mark and I talk about this a lot. There's a bunch of us that have been doing.
Well, for some reason, your sound is a little quiet and broken up.
Is any better?
Not really.
How's this?
It's just quiet, but I can hear you.
Okay. So just let me know, and if there's a sound issue, just let me know right away versus having to deal.
It's good now.
Okay. All right. I'm sure everyone's familiar with the site. There's not a whole lot that I can update with updated information about what's going on there, because we're not sure a whole bunch is going on there. I know the owner has been talking to a number of different uh, development firms and engineers to try to give him a sense of what direction he should go in. And I know if George was still here, he could also probably talk a little bit about the challenges that the site presents. On paper, I mean, it's if you look at it, really what you're looking at is you're looking at what in essence is nearly an entire city block sitting in a downtown area of a relatively densely populated town. That's pretty unheard of to a large degree, because redeveloping that site does not have necessarily a lot of traditional constraints that some other sites would. I mean, existing buildings could easily be disassembled and something else put there. The question is, what do you put there? What is it? What is it going to look like? And how do you make money off of it? And we have repeatedly heard from either the owner themselves or the people that they're working with that, yes, this looks like a fabulously awesome project in order to do. And then they kick the tires a bit and they run some numbers. And then we hear, well, if you redeveloped it, you'd have to build up. And that would really throw in a lot of additional costs. You'd have to figure out some type of a parking solution for all of that development that's going to go up in the air. And so that's more costs. So then that translates into a certain amount of dollars that you would have to charge per square foot in order to get some type of return on your investment. And then that number is usually the number where we see and hear people get a little nervous and say, well, this particular market may not, in fact, bear that type of cost. So you have other people that are going to go to other markets and where they feel that it is a more of a done deal or an easier or lower hanging fruit, wherever that may be. We see here and talk about them all the time, whether it's the Lancasters or the Phoenixvilles or the Allentowns of the world. And so if you're a developer, you might say, well, I'm going to look somewhere else. Even though this project really looks great, it's going to be hard to figure out how to make it all work. Seeing and hearing that, it gets frustrating, especially for those of us who have spent a good portion of their lives here, if not their entire lives here, and probably know the market a little bit better from a gut standpoint versus some statistics on a piece of paper standpoint. And if George was still here, maybe he could talk about it a little bit more, in where being the outsider coming in and buying the VF property for basically nothing and worrying whether or not that nothing is going to translate into something was a real concern for them, because of what they thought the market was like here in the greater Reading area. For most of us, I would venture to say that I don't know if insulting is the word. Demoralizing maybe is a better word, but I feel like if you're in the greater Philadelphia area and you're looking northwest, Berks County probably seems like like Potter County to us here in Berks County, where it's like the Wild West. Like there's nothing up there. It's like it's like rusty railroads, brambles, and burnout row homes, kind of a thing. But that's not the case. There's a real market here, and I feel like it's underserved in a number of ways by a number of different industries. And I think Vanity Fair is one. The old Vanity Fair property is one component to that. It's not anecdotal anymore, and so it's frustrating when we talk about this specific property, because, and I keep talking about this property. There's no other property in this county, in my opinion, and I know that sounds like a bold statement, but if you put a signature project on that specific parcel, in where no one else in Berks County could point to that and say, well, we've got it, that's number 2 of this. Well, no, this is going to be number 1 of this. There's nothing else in the county that would even come close to what that could potentially look like if you put in a very, very well-designed mixed-use development in a densely urbanized area. if you put a mixed-use development over there at the Fairgrounds Mall, who's going to walk there? No one's going to walk there. It's still a mixed-use development sitting along, an extant commercial highway where nearly every other portion of that mile or two is still depressed commercially in a very large way. That's not the case. This would be, putting people and businesses literally in the middle of a downtown, which if you talk to anybody that is in the whole new urbanism and walkability community will tell you that's exactly what you need to do. In my opinion, my very humble opinion, not that I'm an expert, but the city of Reading, if they were to figure out a way how to actually have people living on Penn Street versus, building hotels and arenas, you might actually get some type of redevelopment. The formula always says put people on top of the places you want them to walk and exist and buy stuff. So I think this particular parcel represents an unbelievable opportunity. It's just seemingly trying to figure out how to convince others that whose money would be on the line that it's actually worth their money. I hate to use the old adage of you build it and they will come, but isn't that kind of what happened with the VF property? They started presenting plans to both borough councils as to what they would start to like to do with it and what it might look like, and all of a sudden, here comes this underserved market coming in, filling up the buildings because they're interested in doing so, whether it's the hospital or UGI or the orthopedic place or Sly Fox or what have you. Here we go.
Phil, George told me that he got a lot of pushback from his board when he brought up the VF project, but he just kind of pushed it and, obviously got it done. Excuse me.
Sure, right, and there you go, and again, that's coming from a business, an investment firm that's known for taking risks. I've always been told that Equus is a company that's known for taking risks. So here you have a risk-taking, in air quotes, investment firm coming in and having to, have a cheerleader on their team in order to outlay $1 million plus for an old factory building, and they have all of their doubts. And here we go, it's taken care of. So I don't want to be too much of a rainbows and unicorns kind of guy here, but I think we all get a little frustrated, and hearing about the mall, hearing about the Berkshire Mall situation, that's also frustrating, where it seems like we've got a company coming in that's just going to sit there and sit on their hands and try to wait and see what happens versus someone aggressively wanting to come in and try to do something special. That's disappointing to hear. And again, these cold feet, this trepidation, I'm not sure Berks County can handle this kind of an attitude. Again, I find demoralizing and somewhat insulting because at the end of the day, we're community leaders here trying to get projects done. And, I'm tired of having to put on a dog and pony show for outside dollars to come in to actually get something done, because I feel, and I'm sure a lot of you do feel, that this market is underserved in a way that other markets have, are also probably underserved, and they've gotten the development dollars. If you know Michael Cowder, and I know a lot of you do, he told me something very, very interesting a couple of years ago. He said to me, he said, "Why is Lancaster getting all this money?" Lancaster is an old farm town that sits in the middle of farm fields. There's nothing necessarily beautiful about the surrounding area. He said, "Phil, we've got Reading that sits next to a gorgeous river and an unbelievable mountain, vista." He said the natural landscape, the natural beauty of this city and what's around it is by far and large so much more than, say, in Allentown or Lancaster. But no one seems to know how to leverage all of these natural assets that we have in order to turn it into something special. At the end of the day, if you go back to 1990 and compare the cities of Reading and the cities of Lancaster with regard to what's going on economically, it's probably apples to apples. But somehow they figured out how to, slap a rocket ship on their back and sail to the moon. and it's very frustrating.
Yeah,
How
it is. It is frustrating.
we've been overpassed, it seems. But
So Phil, do you have anything else to add about West Reading? It's this meeting's going on way too long, and I apologize for that, but we still do want to get through the rest of the agenda.
sure. All I'll say real quick is that because of the 5-year plan that Mark referenced earlier, we're likely going to be taking a lot from that, and from the borough standpoint, we'll probably be reconfiguring some of our zoning to reflect some of the things that we'd like to see have happen that are rendered in the plan. And so we may be independently going out, the borough, I mean, not the foundation, and retaining Durkin Edson services in order to try to do some of that stuff. I'm a zoning geek and a planning geek, so that's exciting for me because there's things in there that we would not have never been able to even conceive of if we would not have brought a consultant in. So that's on our plate, and we're going to be sharpening our pencils shortly in order to try to get some of that done.
Thanks, Phil. Anybody have any questions for Phil? Okay, thank you. How about 4th Street, Michelle, or is Jim here?
Excuse me, he's not. I just wanted to give this committee a quick update since some of you are not part of infrastructure. The really good news is that the bids came in extremely low. We have approximately $2.187 million in grant funding, and we have a total project cost of about $2.2 million. So the project will be completed with an outlay of borough funds of approximately $12,500.
That's good news.
That's excellent news.
I don't know if we still have Mark and Phil here on the call. Do you want to comment about the bike trail portion that extends into West Reading as well? What's the status of that?
We're doing that for them.
Okay. That's all we need to know. Okay, thank you. Is that all for 4th Street?
That's all for 4th Street.
Michelle,
Thanks.
so none of those funds are potentially in jeopardy with any of the impact from the state? They're all pretty much locked up?
We have an executed grant agreement that was executed back in, I believe, February with DCED for the $2 million. And Jenny Granger from PennDOT has given me a letter of funding commitment for the $187,000 for the bike route. So no, those funds are not in jeopardy. I've asked Colleen and Kathy that question multiple times, and the answer has been you have an executed grant agreement, they can't pull that back.
That's great.
That is great. Okay, how about the redevelopment overlay zone?
You heard George mention earlier in the call that, him and I had talked pretty extensively on Tuesday. He sent me an email that gave his critiques and insight on the overlay regulations that Chris, Jim, and I had brought a draft to this committee back in April. The very short version to keep this moving is that Chris, Jim, and I are going to meet next week to incorporate some of the changes that George provided, that Greg Heflin provided, and that I've gotten from some other developers to come up with some tweaks that we think are going to be necessary to make those regulations actually attractive to developers to use.
That's great. So when do you think you'll be ready to bring it to council? In August?
I'm hoping we can talk about it at the July Economic Development Committee meeting, and then potentially, yes, August meeting, motion for advertisement.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any miscellaneous topics to be discussed? Does anybody else have anything?
I have one, if nobody else does.
Go ahead.
You will recall at the last council meeting, council adopted a resolution to allow restaurants to operate with outdoor seating in the yellow phase. I've spoken to at least one restaurant owner. He is the owner of what was Gianotti's on State Hill Road, who is preparing to open for the very first time, with him as the new owner. And he's requesting the ability to have outdoor seating in the green phase. I talked to Chris about this yesterday. there's two options that the committee and council could choose to go. The one is to allow only outdoor restaurant seating in the green phase. So if a restaurant wants to open with outdoor seating, they would be limited to only having outdoor seating. Or the second option would be to allow them to operate under the state regulations of 50% interior occupancy plus outdoor seating. My only concern if we did 50% plus 50% interior plus exterior seating is that, any individual restaurant would not be able to create more seating between 50% interior and exterior than what they would normally have 100% interior. And I mean, that's something I could look at as part of the review process of an application they submitted, just to make sure we don't run into any parking issues. But my request would be if the committee's in favor of allowing outdoor seating to continue in the green under one of those two options, that someone would make a motion to recommend that to council, and then Chris and I can work on drafting a new resolution.
Well, I thought if you get one of those permits, temporary permits for the LCB, from the LCB, doesn't it expire after the yellow zone?
I believe it may. I mean, again, we're not necessarily talking about alcohol sales outside, and we can make that very clear on our application process. The request I'm getting is just to allow, outdoor seating in the green in addition to the 50% interior occupancy.
Yeah, we have no control over the LCB part of it. This is, it's just for what the borough regulates in terms of zoning to allow the outdoor seating.
Do we have say as to where on their parking lot they want to have outdoor seating?
Yes, they're required to submit a site plan to me that shows, number of seats, where the seats are being created, that they're creating a buffer area between incoming vehicular traffic to separate pedestrians and seating from the potential of being hit by a car. If there's a tent structure, they're not just proposing tables, but tables inside of a tent structure. There's an inspection that's required by the fire department. I mean, if a restaurant came to me and wanted to put seating in an area that obviously posed a safety risk, no, I would not be approving their application. And I'd, have a dialogue with them. You need to find a more appropriate place on the site to do this.
Okay, thanks.
Well, they're going to have to file an extension of licensed premises to do that with the LCB.
Yes,
Michelle.
but I mean, keep in mind, not every one of our restaurants has a liquor license.
That's true. So what do we want to do with this? I say nothing.
It seems like after all this turmoil and the economic downturn, we should be doing everything we can to help encourage these small businesses to get back on track. And as long as, I think Michelle's point of not letting it exceed 100% capacity, which wouldn't be the parking problem, I don't see anything wrong with extending it.
Agreed.
Dave Boucher, I agree.
Okay. Well,
All right, you're changing my mind.
What Michelle laid out were two options. So I guess I'm looking for some clarification. And Keith, since you're the one who jumped in on that, is it clear what Michelle and I are seeking guidance on? Option one would be to give the option to the proprietor to use yellow phase rules during the green phase, no indoor seating, just continue outdoor seating. Or option two would be to give them the sum of 50% interior and up to an additional 50% capacity outside.
My feeling would be to go with option two, which would encourage them to have the maximum amount of capacity and not exceed. So that would be my opinion, to let them do both inside and outside.
All right, thanks for that clarification.
Yeah, that makes the most sense. You're right, Keith. Does somebody want to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
But we also ought to say that it's subject to the PLCB stuff.
Yeah, well, that's automatic, Fred.
All right. Well, then I'll second it.
I think Dave
Okay.
already did.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, aye.
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 Opposed? Ayes have it. Is there anything else?
That's all I have.
Anybody else have anything? Okay, hey, thanks for your patience. It's been a long meeting. The meeting is adjourned. Thanks.
Thanks,
Have a good
everybody.
day, everyone.
Take care.